Another question that I had, because I've been listening to the BBSs, which first I want to tell everybody, please definitely do go to the YouTube page and start listening, because what Shusara did is she's actually pulled back from the very beginning of when we had started those. And just the first few episodes are all very in depth um, about Shusara, who she is, her story.
Right.
There's so much information. So I would really encourage everyone to go to our YouTube page and start listening to those.
Mm.
They're chock full.
They are. They are. Yeah. Which is exactly why I wanted to turn them into videos. Because there's just so much over. I mean, that was 2013 that we started, right? So
Yeah.
like, there's just so much teaching in there over the course of those years, and it's just so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Great thing for people to have access to, I think.
Yes, absolutely. I'm very happy that they're on there. So another question that I had, because I was listening to the BBS archives, and in one of them you actually are talking about the work that we're doing here. And one thing that you say is that we're here to run the race, and that we are God victorious, and that we've already done this, and we're just here to run the race now. And recently,
Yes.
in Satsang, and when we also had a board meeting, and to the council you had spoken, we were talking about basically the state of the world today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you've kind of changed your assessment as far as
You think so?
well, or not. But it's like I was wondering, because I was thinking those that do go back and listen to BBS and
Yeah.
hear that, but
Mm-hmm.
then listen to possibly an excerpt, or if they actually end up hearing that satsang, that they may hear what seems like kind of like, well, I don't know so much now, So I was just wondering if you could kind of explain that.
Okay, so because I'm your guide.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just answer the question, I'm going to walk you through something.
Okay.
Because I'm curious how it is that you took the information as it had been presented through BBS in the beginning, and took the information that I gave you in the last week or two, and turned it into something that has shifted from one thing to another thing, without potentially seeing that both are true simultaneously.
Well, I think they can be.
But yet that's not what you were holding as far as how you perceived it. Because you said what did you say? I changed my tune. Is that how you said it?
It's more of what I'm wondering what other people will get out of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is good, because what we can do with it is utilize this to show how the mind always reverts back to thinking in terms of either or, because that's what the mind does. The mind struggles to hold a point of reference that says it can be both.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't it? It really does.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it's like this, the ego naturally wants to fall into it. So it initially hears a certain thing that's given out, and it perceives it in a certain way. And it says, okay, so in what you're saying, the story is we've come literally back from the future into the past to make different choices that lead to the ultimate ascension, but back from the space where the ascension has already done. It's done. And now we're here to live out our choices, to make different choices, and to keep doing it until it gets all worked out. Mm-hmm. And then simultaneously, you've got another aspect that comes in that says, wait a minute, we've got to get very real about what's going on this planet, because of what's happened environmentally, especially, it may be too late for the planet to have time to, fix itself and still be habitable for humanity. Mm-hmm. And that's accurate. So how can both be true simultaneously, right? Wait a minute. If you're saying that we're God victorious, that it's already done, but now you're saying it may be too late, how does that work? And so, of course, you can see why anybody listening would go, well, that just contradicts itself. Like, it doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. So did something change? And I would say, no, nothing's changed. My point in giving the information the way I gave it recently was that I believe there's a level of complacency that seekers have taken on, because they've been given an understanding by many, many teachers that say, well, I mean, if you take it to its most fundamental, you're the eternal. You exist outside of space and time. You're formless and single, beginningless and endless. So is anything going on here something that ultimately is real, something that ultimately matters? No, not at all, of course. And that's where we always have to start there. But now we got to look here. And so here, I think so many seekers, because they've been given the understanding now, and it was time for people to be given the understanding, you're God. You're God. You're perfect and whole as you are, right? Does that mean that we stop doing our work here? No, not even close, because guess what? Just having the intellectual understanding that you're God, you are the all that is, and there's nothing here going on that affects the totality of what you actually are. Just having that understanding will not walk you off the life-death cycle. Having the understanding will not stop you from having to reincarnate, because right now consciousness is enslaved in this paradigm, and it is enslaved here until you, as your divine nature, truly walks yourself out of it. And it does that through experience in the world. It doesn't do it through something coming in from the outside. It's you. I mean, there's grace involved, don't get me wrong, but it's you consciously walking a path where you're consciously taking the steps to undo all the stuff that you've taken on as you. So you can't be complacent in the world. And that's what I'm seeing. And that's where that chunk came from recently. I'm seeing a whole lot of seekers out there who are very wrapped up in meditation and joining with other like-minded people who all think the same and feel like they're in the space of love and light, and they're not getting their hands dirty anymore. And so my challenge was do you think it's going to happen if we all just sit here and hold space and no one shows up to do the work? And that's the point. The point is it has to be done. So where in your world aren't you doing it? And of course it starts with yourself. Where in your world aren't you doing your own work? Meaning doing whatever needs to be done to clear here, right? So then you can be a clear conduit for whatever has to happen out here, because God needs a body, and this is real until it's not. And we do have a planet that is in major distress and a humanity that is predominantly completely unconscious. I mean, completely unconscious. So it's up to those of us who are here in service, and most likely just about anybody who would listen to this video is part of that group. It's up to us to consciously take action in the world, because it doesn't just, how do we think ascension happens if we don't take action to do what is right in the world? Yeah, to make changes where we see something is very wrong, very much existing outside of the heart. If we don't band together and say this is unacceptable and we're not going to do it anymore, why would we expect anything to change, right? So is it true we've come back from the future? Sure, of course, to a certain degree, because there is no time. But can you say it's true that in the play of time, we've come back to make different choices? Yeah. For whatever reason, we chose this time frame. It doesn't mean you could transition and come back in 2,000 years prior to now to make different choices, to redo certain lessons, to, whatever it is, all for the ultimate benefit of humanity here in the greater whole of time space. So that is true, right? But it's simultaneously true that if we don't take action as needed to do what needs to be done, then this cycle is going to just have to start over again, which it has done before. Just because we know that we've succeeded doesn't mean that this is the time frame that occurred. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because it's happened before, right? And so people who are familiar with, and I'll just use Atlantis and Lemuria because most people are familiar with that. A lot of people don't believe it happened. It absolutely happened. And in that, it's pretty much the same story we're looking at right now. You've got the side of major technology and the side that was extremely left-brained, being how, Atlantis kind of functioned, versus the more right-brained Lemurian side. And this disparity that happened between both that ultimately ended up in these cataclysmic wars. And, we ended up with just the submersion of Atlantis and most of Lemuria. I mean, it was just a nightmare. Most of humanity was wiped off the planet. And what I'm saying is we're truly back in that kind of a same space due to our choices. So how many times are we going to replay it? I don't know. Who's to say? Ultimately, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, it's done. But it doesn't mean you give up today, right? You're here to do what you can today. That's all that ever matters. Yeah. Do what you can right now. Be at peace knowing you've done what you can. That's all that ever matters. Yeah. Does that help? You think that would help people who might hear two different
I think so.
Stories coming forward?
I think so.
Okay, good.